Junko Furuta was a 17-year-old Japanese high school student who was abducted, tortured, raped and murdered in the late 1980s. Known throughout Japan as Concrete-encased high school girl, the case of Junko Furuta drew nationwide attention owing to sheer brutality the girl had to endure before death found her. The abuse was mainly perpetrated by 4 teenage boys, whose names were Hiroshi Miyano, Ogura, Shinji Minato, and Yasushi Watanabe. Approximately 100 people knew about Furuta's captivity, but either neglected to report it or themselves participated in the torture and murder. Most of the participants were friends of the teenage boys, who were low-ranking members of the yakuza. Yakuza is a Japanese gangster, members of what are formally called mafia, like criminal organization. They are also involved in criminal activities worldwide. Furuta was born in Misato. As a teenager, she attended Yashio Munami High School and worked part-time during after-school hours. She lived with her parents and her 2 brothers. Before her abduction, she had accepted a job at an electronics retailer. One of her schoolmates, Hiroshi Miyano, had a crush on her and asked her out of multiple occasions. Furuta turned him down as she was not interested in relationship. On 25th November 1988, Miyano and his friend Nobuharu Minato wandered around Misato with the intention of robbing and raping local women. At 8:30 p.m., they spotted Furuta cycling home after she finished her part-time job. Under Miyano's order, Minato kicked Furuta off her bicycle and immediately fled the scene. Miyano, using the situation of it being a coincidence that he had witnessed this attack, approached Furuta and offered to walk her home safely. Furuta, accepting this offer, was unaware that Miyano was leading her to a nearby warehouse, where he revealed his yakuza connection. Miyano threatened to kill her as he raped her in the warehouse and once again in a nearby hotel. From the hotel, Miyano called Minato and his friend Ogura and Yasushi Watanabe and bragged to them about the rape. Ogura reportedly asked Miyano to keep her in a captivity in order to allow numerous people to sexually assault her. The group had a history of a gang rape and had recently kidnapped and raped another girl who was released afterward. Around 3 a.m., Miyano took Furuta to a nearby park where Minato, Ogura and Watanabe were waiting. They had gleaned her home address from a notebook in her backpack and told her that they knew where she lived and that yakuza members would kill her family if she attempted to escape. She was overpowered by the 4 boys and taken to a house in the Ayase district where she was gang raped. The house, which was owned by Minato's parents, soon became their regular gang hangout. On November 27, Furuta's parents contacted the police about their daughter's disappearance. In order to discourage further investigation, the kidnappers coerced her into calling her mother. She was forced to say that she had run away but was safe and staying with a friend. Furuta was also forced to ask her mother to stop the police investigation into her disappearance. When Minato's parents were present, Furuta was forced to pose as the girlfriend on one of the kidnappers. They later dropped this pretense when it became clear that Minato's parents would not report them to the police. The Minatos stated that they did not intervene because they were aware of Miyano's yakuza connections and feared retaliation. And because of their own son was increasingly violent towards them, Minato's brothers was also aware of the situation but did nothing to prevent it. Furuta was held captive in a Minato residence for more than 40 days, during which time she was abused, raped and tortured. The group responsible also invited and encouraged their other yakuza friends to torment Furuta. It was later said that over 100 men had participated in the rape and torture. According to their trial statements, the 4 of them raped her over 400, beat her, starved her, hung her from the ceiling and used her as a punching bag, dropped barbells onto her stomach and forced her to eat live cockroaches and drink her own urine, forced her to masturbate in front of them and forced her to dance and sing to songs while being beaten. They inserted various objects into her vagina and anus, including a lit light bulb fireworks. They burned her vagina and clitoris with cigarettes and lighters, and her eyelids with hot wax. They also tore off her left nipple with pliers and pierced her breast with sewing needles. Furuta was said to slip into unconsciousness because of the repeated assault, leading them to dunk her head into the bucket of water each time to continue the torture. When her body was found, bottles were stuck up her anus and her face was unrecognizable. She was also found to be pregnant despite the severe damage of her uterus. Koichi Ihara, one of the rapists, was allegedly bullied into raping Furuta. After he left the Minato household, he told his brother about the incident. His brother subsequently told their parents, who contacted police. 2 police officers were dispatched to the Minato house. However, they were informed that there was no girl inside. The police officers declined an invitation to look around, believing the invitation alone was sufficient proof that there was nothing untoward to be. Both officers faced considerable backlash from the community. Had they indeed searched the house and located Furuta, her ordeal would have only lasted 16 days, and she may well have recovered from her injury. The 2 officers were fired for failing to follow procedure. At the beginning of December, Furuta attempted to call the police. However, she was discovered by Miyano before she could say anything. When the police phoned back, Miyano informed them that the original emergency call was a mystery. As punishment for contacting the authorities, Furuta's attackers doused her legs and feet in lighter fluid and set them on fire. They also pushed large bottles into her anus, causing severe bleeding. She survived these injuries and continued to be raped and tortured. Furuta is reported to have asked her captors on multiple occasions to kill her and get it over, but they refused. Instead, they forced her to sleep outside on the balcony during winter time and locked her in a freezer. One of the kidnappers told the court that her hands and legs were so badly damaged that it took her over an hour to drag herself downstairs to the toilet. Due to the severity of the torture, she eventually lost bladder and bowel control and was subsequently beaten for soiling the carpet. She was also unable to drink water or consume food and would vomit after each attempt, for which she received further beating. The brutality of the attacks drastically altered Furuto's appearance. Her face was swollen that it was difficult to make out her features. Her body was also severely crippled, giving off a rotting smell that caused the 4 boys to lose sexual interest in her. As a result, the boys kidnapped and gang raped a 19-year-old woman who, like Furuta, was on way home from work. On January 4, 1989, Furuta took her last breath. She was finally killed after she won a game of mahjong against Miyano. Miyano decided to vent his anger on Furuta. At this point, Furuta was barely alive. Out of frustration, the boys beat her with an iron barbell, kicked and punched her, and placed 2 short candles on her eyelids and burning them with a hot wax. The 4 boys covered their hands in plastic bags which were taped at the wrist. They continued to beat her and dropped an iron exercise ball onto her stomach several times. They poured lighter fluid onto her thighs, arms, face and stomach and once again set her on fire. Their attack reportedly lasted 2 hours. Furuta eventually succumbed to her wounds and died that day. 4 hours after her death, Nobuharu Minato's brother called her to tell him that Furuta appeared to be dead. Afraid of being penalized for murder, the group wrapped her body in blankets and shoved it into a travel bag. Then they put her body in a 55-gallon drum and filled it with the wet concrete. Around 8 p.m., they loaded and eventually disposed the drum into the cement truck in Koto. 3rd Jan 1989. Hiroshi Miyano and Joe Ogura were arrested for the gang rape of the 19-year-old woman who they had kidnapped in December. On 29 March, 2 police officers came to interrogate them, as women's underwear has been found at their addresses. During the interrogation, one of the officers led Miyano into believing that police were aware of a murder committed by Miyano. Thinking that Joe Ogura had confessed to the crimes against Furuta, Miyano told police where to find Furuta's body. The police were initially puzzled by the confession, as they had been referring to the murder of a different woman and her 7-year-old son that had occurred 9 days prior to Furuta's abduction. That case remains unsolved to this day. The police found drum containing Furuta's body the following day. She was identified by her fingerprints. On 1st April 1989, Joe Ogura was arrested for a separate sexual assault and subsequently re-arrested for Furuta's murder. Following by the arrest of Ogura, they also arrest Yasushi Watanabe, Nobuharu Minato and Minato's brother. Four perpetrators were caught and tried. However, because they were all underage when the crime was committed, they were to be tried as juveniles but eventually faced sentences of adults, except that the court withheld their identities. So still, given the severity of their crimes, the sentences they were hanged out were rather low. By now, each of them is already out of jail. 3 of the boys served less than 8 years. The leader was originally sentenced to 17 years in prison, but after his appeal, instead of lowering his sentence, Judge Ryuji Yanase bumped his sentence to 20 years. The same judge also increased the sentence for 2 more boys who appealed. One didn't, so his sentence stayed as was. The saddest part is, in their late 30s, and all of them are out of jail.